Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Food for Thought digital learning series. Today, we're going to be diving into the incredible work that happens at Second Harvest Heartland and our partners in food sourcing and logistics. And we'll be taking you through the entire chain, starting with the farm where the quality nutrition is first produced, all the way through end distribution, the partners that get it to families' tables across the region. My name is Patrick Martin. I'm a member of the team here at Second Harvest and looking forward to this fascinating conversation with amazing panelists. So, to start off, we'll ground things kind of at the 10,000 foot level. On the slide you can see in front of you now, across 59 green counties that are highlighted, we have our core service area. And within those 59 counties are more than 1,100 agency and program partners that are serving really on the front lines of taking our nutrition we supply and ensuring it reaches the folks in the deepest need. We further palletize and distribute to food banks, the stars you see on the map there, across northern Minnesota, North Dakota, and Wisconsin. And we even further, which is not pictured, but which we'll get into later, serve in the Midwest Food Hub, which reaches additional states across the upper Midwest and helps ensure that we always have quality produce ready for families who need it. So without further ado, we'll introduce our amazing panelists. We will start right at the very beginning of where a lot of this nutrition is coming from. Jon Van Erkel with Van Erkel Farms. Jon, thank you for taking the time to be here. Would you mind just introducing yourself, your farm?
Yeah, good afternoon. Jon Van Erkel from Van Erkel Farms. We're down here in Hollandale, Minnesota, about 90 miles south of Minneapolis, right where Interstate 35 and Interstate 90 intersect. That's basically where we sit. I'm the fourth generation to be down here farming. My great grandfather came here in the mid 30s. My grandfather was born in Northwest Iowa in 22, and then in the late 20s they kind of got homesick and they all wanted to go back to Holland. And then in the mid 30s, all U.S. citizens imported out of Europe, so they came back to Hollandale and started farming here. Over the years, we've raised basically a little bit of everything: asparagus, to broccoli, to sugar beets. Now we're mostly carrots, onions, potatoes, sweet corn, and then we raise a few acres of soybean.
That's fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. And I was looking forward to a deep dive into the farm. I didn't know we'd get a ride along too. So this is an awesome twofer.
Yeah, I'm out on some crop care products, not onions, but potatoes today. So
appreciated. That's appreciated. And coming from the farm, obviously there is a lot of spinning gears and moving parts to get that to our agency partners, which is the realm of Sarah Moberg, our Chief Operations Officer at Second Harvest. Sarah, would you mind introducing yourself? Tell us a little bit about the operation.
Sure. Thank you, Patrick, and good afternoon, everyone. Sarah Moberg. I am the Chief Operations Officer here at Second Harvest Heartland. I am sitting in Brooklyn Park in our warehouse facility right now, and we really serve as the supply chain backbone for hunger relief in Minnesota and western Wisconsin, and as Patrick mentioned, and the map is showing, even further into the Midwest area. Part of my role is to lead our teams who manage the end-to-end sourcing and distribution of the millions of meals that go into our community. And so the part of that supply chain you heard from Jon, and I think next you're going to hear from Jessica, but it truly is, it takes all of us to get the food out to the community when it's needed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate your time today. And last but certainly not least, the frontline distribution point for so many folks, Open Cupboard, and we are thankful to have Jessica Francis, Executive Director of Open Cupboard, here with us today. Jessica, if you would mind introducing yourself and the work of your organization.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm Jessica Francis. I'm the Executive Director here at Open Cupboard. We're located in Oakdale, but we serve, primarily the East Metro, but we are open to serving whoever comes to us in need of food. And so you might hear in the background when I talk the fact that we're open and we're serving customers right now. We have probably about 18 shoppers who are shopping in our location right now, and we're open 6 days a week from 10:30 a.m. till 6 p.m. every weekday. And so, this market is just making sure that fresh and healthy food is available to anyone who needs it. And we'll have probably about 700 families come to us for food just in this one program that's open right now.
Wow. Holy cow. Well, thank you so much for your partnership and your service to the community. That's huge. So I guess we will jump things back for our first section here and really dive into the production of so much of this nutrition that Van Erkel Farms generously provides to us. So Jon, you told us a little bit about kind of the fourth generation on the farm, the history of the farm, but obviously you're doing a real heavy lift with getting us the nutrition we need. So the Van Erkel Farm supplies onions not only to Second Harvest Heartland, but a variety of labor-intensive crops to companies across the region. So we'll start off. What quantity of onions do you supply to Second Harvest?
Quantity wise, I ship approximately, we'll call it one semi-load, or about 40,000 pounds of onions a week, from October to ideally through middle of March is kind of my season. Our number one outlet is Walmart. Has a local grown label. If you go to your local Walmart store, or Buns and Barley's, now they also have a Minnesota. There'll be a 3-pound bag of onions that on the little white tag, it'll say Minnesota grown. That's our onions. And the main onions I ship to Second Harvest and you guys is what we call a number 2. It's a mechanically sound onion, and it's a perfectly good onion. It's just, as you can kind of see in that picture, it's mostly just going to be missing skin, and it's peeled fine, and it cannot make a number 1 grade. The consumer, they want number 1. It's got to have a perfect skin on it. So it's a really good outlet for us, because otherwise we don't really there's not really a market for these off grade of anything. Our potatoes, there's Mrs. Jerry's potato salad out of Albert Lee. We supply them all their salad potatoes for September through the end of July. And then Hy-Vee grocery stores, they have a salad plant down in Ankeny that we supply with potatoes for about the same times. The carrots go to over in Glencoe, Seneca Foods, which has Green Giant and various other labels. That's where our carrots go. And then we ship some to Lakeside Foods up in Owatonna that has, they have various labels as well. Most of those will get cut up and either put in a can, or they go into your frozen vegetable packs you'll find in your grocery store. Sweet corn goes to Bird's Eye Foods. That ends up in your instant or frozen packs of sweet corn. That's where that ends up. And the corn and soybean just goes to, we got a local ethanol plant, and there's a big soybean crusher plant around here that they crush it up for feed for various animals.
Wow, that is a lot of reach. And I suppose to the point earlier about a lot of these being pretty labor intensive, what does that planning process look like as you're kind of spinning a lot of plates with different crops that I'm assuming are on different timelines throughout the growing season?
Yes. So basically, kind of to start early spring, beginning to middle of April, right about as soon as we can get in the field, we'll go in and we try to plant the onions and carrots as early as possible to get them the longest growing season possible. And that way you want them, especially the onions, you like them to naturally mature in the field. So if you come in September, or even towards the end of August, but kind of middle to end of September, if you go by an onion field, the tops will be basically brown and laying down. There'll be a real light green. And that's what we like to see, because that means that the bulb it's naturally started to mature, and then it'll actually pulls all the nutrients from the top and bottom into the onion itself. And if it does it naturally, then those tops were sealed off very well. If they don't mature, you get a green, and then that top is almost open, and it'll never really mature. and really it'll never really firm up very good on the top there. So, and then about the middle of May, we'll start our kind of start planting some potatoes. In the middle of May is when we kind of hit the potatoes hard and heavy. At that point, we hope to have the onions and carrots done. Sweet corn is usually we start around Memorial Day, and that's dictated by the processors. They tell you kind of plant this many acres on this day. And we got corn and soybeans are kind of just sprinkled in there. We start planting those middle to end of April and try to finish up middle to end of May.
Wow, well, that is a lot of moving parts. And even just say for onions, what does the team look like at your farm for getting that all harvested and into the truck that ends up heading to Second Harvest?
So in the fall, in the spring, we've got about 7 full-time people running around year round or throughout the growing season. And then in the fall, we probably have a couple dozen people going around. We run about 2 to 3 harvesters. You kind of look in the picture with me in it. That's a potato harvesting operation, but it's a very similar operation to the onions. You'll see that the machine is going through and it's picking up the product. And then there's various webs and belts. It kind of circles around the machine, and any junk or dirt kind of falls through, and it ends up going in those trucks. We run about 7 trucks in a rotation in the fall to fill it, and then we basically back them up we have various conveyors to kind of unload the trucks and move where they need to go. But yeah, and then our packing up, and then the packing shed, it takes about, I think we have about 10 people that are operating the packing shed.
Wow.
When we're packing the onions out.
Well, that's quite I'm sure it's routine out at the farm, but I will say anybody curious to see what a truck full of onions looks like, come on up to Brooklyn Park. We'll even let you help us break it down into smaller packages. There's a deal for you. But again, thank you, Jon. We'll come back to you a little bit later, but appreciate the farm side perspective. And obviously, coming from Van Erkel's farms, there is an awful lot of mechanics and moving parts that then get it out to those 1,100 agency partners. And I guess, Sarah, on the operations side, so starting at the 10,000 foot level, for folks visiting the distribution center, I know, I'm sure you've seen as well, they're surprised by the scale of the operation. So how much food is moving through our facility, and just high level, what are the major teams that help get that from you?
Sure. So we're one of the largest food banks in the entire country. And a lot of people in Minnesota and even in the Midwest don't realize the size and scale that we have. And, we think about ourselves as really being the backbone of hunger relief in the region. This year, we're on track to deliver about 130 million pounds of food coming through our system and then out into the community. About 2/3 of that actually comes through our walls within the warehouse. And the other third, we are pairing and grabbing the food from retailers and matching retailers up with agency partners like Jessica. So the food is able to go direct from maybe a Cub or a Target to a food shelf and then out into the community. That is a super efficient way to get food out the door fast. Of the product that is coming into our warehouse, we have a sourcing team that is grabbing product from multiple different places. So it could include local or national donations, government programs, and then some purchase product as well. And once our sourcing team puts the orders in and grabs that product, it comes into our warehouse. From there, our warehouse team unloads it, we store it, and then while we're receiving the product, our agency partners like Jessica are able to view it on our inventory and put orders in. And then, next day, we're able to pick those orders and put them on trucks and then back out into the community through food shelves like the one Jessica runs. In total, We have in an average day, probably 60 to 70 employees that are really focused and doing the heavy lifting on the warehouse operations and driving the trucks to make this all possible. I mean, for us, we feel like we need to take an enormous amount of care with every meal that we touch, because we know it ultimately is going to end up on the neighbor's plate.
Absolutely. And Jody, if I could have you go back one slide for me. I know Second Harvest obviously works with farmers like the Van Erkels to supply, I mean, not only our agency and program partners, but the regional food banks that we see here as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about the Midwest Food Hub and kind of what's our role in that broader picture?
Sure. The Midwest Food Hub is a capability that we have that really allows and empowers smaller food banks from the shaded states that you see there to benefit from the large scale of our operations. And so a lot of food banks don't have the capacity to take in a full truckload of onions, as an example. And so instead, we'll bring in the full truckload of onions, and we're going to bring in a truckload of potatoes and carrots and peppers. And then we're going to mix those truckloads and put a pallet or 2 pallets on each truck, and then send those out across the Midwest states that you see here. And so it's a terrific way for us to essentially become a mixing center and really help neighbors outside of Minnesota, outside of our service area, to get the variety and the quality of fresh produce that they need. We are also looking at taking that same capability and expanding it into frozen and dry goods as well. So more to come on that, but that's in the pipeline.
Wow, very cool. And you had mentioned kind of the 2/3 moving through the facility and the food rescue kind of being its own channel. So I guess, what do those food rescue sources look like, and what are some of the mechanics of working to say in that kind of separate food rescue channel?
Yeah, so food rescue donors can be traditional grocers. They can be large retailers, club stores like a Costco or Sam's, even gas stations and convenience stores. But the magic there is really to have a team here at Second Harvest Heartland who can build the relationships with those retail donors and understands the food shelf, the agency partner network, and who is open on what days, at what times, so that we can get the food from when it's available at the dock of a retailer quickly, like within 24 hours, out the door at a food shelf like Jessica's, and then quickly to the neighbor. And so if you think about the donations coming through that food stream, a lot of those are close to shelf life products, and so they need to move quickly through our collective supply chain in order to still be really healthy options for our neighbors.
Well, and to that point about kind of the impact on the supply chain moving quickly. So considering 60% of what Second Harvest is distributing is fresh, so what impact does that have on organizational logistics versus distributing, say, packaged or shelf-stable food?
Yeah, I mean, think about your own refrigerator and pantry. The care that you have to take to get yogurt or milk from a grocery store to your home requires, a shorter transit time. It may require a cooler, or it may require, quickly unloading versus there are other times when I'll maybe go to grocery shopping and end up with boxes of cereal or whatever in my trunk for could be days, if I'm being honest. So same food chain supply or supply chain challenges exist in those food rescue places and the fresh needing to come through our supply chain in a really quick and efficient way. We have invested a lot in terms of just our cooler capacity, recognizing that as we really work to get healthy, nutritional food out into the community, we need to have the capacity to bring it in, store it, and distribute it in and maintain that temperature state.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for the perspective. And I guess taking it all the way now to kind of the third step in the chain, the frontline distribution. And Jessica, so glad you're here. And to start us off, earlier this year, I think you had a conversation with the Star Tribune talking about the drive-up food shelf and the indoor shopping facilities that you offer, serving really record numbers of neighbors. So what is the landscape of community need as you're all seeing it right now?
Yeah, we are continuing to see record levels of service, and just last week we had 2 different programs that had record levels of people visiting their programs. And you know, a lot of people ask us you know, why that is, and why, you know, so many people are still needing our help. And you know, a lot of the people that we are serving, you know, who are of working age, are working, you know, often working multiple jobs, but the increased costs of food and other basic needs has just outpaced their income. And so some people come to us, you know, every week, and just they're able to get the fresh produce and the milk and meat and other items that are really the most expensive items on the grocery list, but also the healthier items that help keep their family healthy. So, you know, there's those folks that use us regularly just to stretch their budget and keep the healthy food on the table. And then there's other people that we might not see for months. And because you know, they're making ends meet and things are going well, but then, you know, they might have a car repair, or they might have gotten sick and lost some wages, or some sort of emergency pops up, and they use our programs until they're able to get back on their feet. So there's a lot of reasons why people are coming to us every week, but you know, a lot of folks just need a little help to keep that fresh and healthy food on the table.
Absolutely, especially after kind of the rollback and expanded SNAP benefits and the impact you see there. How much of the food that Open Cupboard is distributing is coming from Second Harvest?
Yeah, so a lot. So we're the most visited food shelf in Minnesota, and we have a lot of partners that help make that happen. But you know, Second Harvest is our most essential partner. We get about 85 to 90% of the food that we distribute comes from Second Harvest Heartland. So it can be either food that we order for our drive up programs, or our delivery programs, or agricultural surplus that we use really across all our programs, or that food rescue that comes in from grocery stores. So the larger grocery stores like, you know, Target, Walmart, Costco maybe come in from Second Harvest. And then we also pick up our own food, like Sarah was referring to. You know, we also pick up our own food from the, you know, the Cub and Kowalski's and local grocery stores as well. But so today we've already had 2 different deliveries from Second Harvest just to fuel our program. So we had one delivery that brought in the food that we ordered. I'm sure there were some onions, probably from John's farm, and so they're bringing us that produce. And then another truck, not long afterwards, came and brought us food that was rescued from grocery stores.
Wow, holy cow! And to that point of the direct food rescue that Open Cupboard is doing. Is that relationships that you've built with the grocery stores? Is that all palletized when you get there? What do the logistics of your food rescue pickup and deliveries look like?
Yeah, so for our direct pickups, what that our drivers do, they go and because our drivers are there 5 days a week, they get to know the produce manager and the dairy manager, and so they bring those items, and it takes a lot of volunteers to sort through all of that, check the dates, make sure that the food is good, and get that ready. And usually, because it's, you know, it's a quick turnaround, we need to get that food out into the market that same day, so it's on the table of people that need it, usually within the same day that we got it. And so it takes a lot of effort to do that, but we have some volunteers that is their favorite thing to do. They just tackle a pallet that's filled with boxes, and And they love going through that. And then if something we aren't able to use it, we compost it and make sure that, we're trying to reduce food waste absolutely as much as possible.
Wow. And I know, obviously, every organization in the world had to adapt coming through COVID-19, creative operations. What changed at Open Cupboard over the past few years that you're planning on carrying on moving forward with?
Yeah, well, absolutely everything changed over the last few years because we've grown from serving about 420 families a week pre-pandemic to more than 4,000 families a week now. And so I think what we saw over the last few years was just a rise in need, but also just a lot of creativity and resources that helped us figure out how to eliminate some of those barriers. So, Second Harvest Heartland made a lot of food available to us. Our volunteers were incredibly blessed by having a lot of volunteers who said, how can we help? And so we changed our programs, we expanded our programs. One case I would talk about would be that in 2020, in the summer, we had a gentleman, and it was an elderly man that was walking 3 miles to our food shelf to pick up food. And then his intention was to carry it home, the 3 miles to his family. And they lived in a mobile home park that was only a few miles away. But what we saw was that only a few miles away was a barrier. To their family, they couldn't get the food that they needed unless he walked. And so we partnered with Second Harvest Heartland, and we started doing food distributions in that mobile home court every week, because what we identified was that there were so many families there that really needed our food, but weren't able to make it here. So we bring the programs to them and eliminate that barrier. So we saw all sorts of things over the last few years that are like that really help us partner with lots of organizations to make sure that need is met.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I guess we just have another minute or two left here, but Jon, I did want to kick it back to you one more time. I guess what does that mean for yourself, for the team out there at Van Erkel Farms, knowing that what you're producing out in the fields is getting to folks who really could use it?
Well, it's really nice, and like I've said before, years ago, guys, I don't remember, but you talk to some of the older generation. There used to be, I'm the only onion grower left here in Hollandale. Years ago, there was 10, 20, 30, there was 40 some, years and years ago. And, you talk to some of that older generation, and you ask that, and you tell them that, hey, I have a actual market for the number 2 onions. And most of them kind of just laugh at you because they think you're nuts. Because there were times where if the onion market was not very good, they just don't, they were junk onions. They would pick them out off the line, and they'd put them in right with the junk onions and haul them back out to the field and dump them because there just wasn't a market for them. So to have a market, it's very, I'm glad it goes to a good cause, because it's like with anything, if you don't have a market for it, it doesn't do me any good. And you always have, I would love to harvest my onions and have no off grade, no anything, but it's not possible in the produce market. So it's a very good outlook, and it's nice that it's close by, where it's going, and you can see that it's going to a good cause, and it's going to people that really need it.
Absolutely.
It's a very good partnership, and I'm glad I have it, and we try to do as much as we can to keep it going.
Well, and you're doing quite a lot. All 3 of you are doing. Again, considering that's the case, thank you for taking time out of your busy days to join us, to give all of our attendees now and folks watching the recording into perpetuity online kind of the inside look at how this all happens. I will say, just on a programming note, keep an eye out. There'll be a recording of this available on our YouTube channel, on Second Harvest Heartland's YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, please do reach out to Second Harvest. We would love to hear those and follow up and get any additional questions answered. And again, thank you all so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your afternoons.